Every winter, billions of dollars vanish through glass. Not stolen, not wasted through broken pipes or failing furnaces. Just quietly bleeding out through the one part of your home most people never think twice about. The windows. And the part that should genuinely unsettle you? The fix has existed for decades. It costs $10. It works. And somewhere along the way, someone made sure you forgot about it. That's the part nobody talks about. Not why it worked, but why we stopped using it. Start with the problem because the numbers alone should make you uncomfortable. In cold climates, heating your home burns through more than 40% of your total energy bill. Nearly half. And even in a well-insulated house, good roof, solid walls, no drafts. Windows are still draining up to 30% of all that heat straight outside. You can see it with a thermal camera. Stand outside a house on a bitter January night and point one at the walls versus the windows. The walls go dark. The windows glow orange and yellow, pulsing with warmth. That color isn't beautiful. It's money leaving your home in real time, rising into cold air that doesn't care. The modern answer is double or triple glazed windows. And genuinely, the technology works. Sealed, gas-filled chambers between panes of glass, engineered to slow heat, transfer to a crawl. Impressive engineering. But each window runs anywhere from several hundred to several $1,000s. A full house renovation? You're talking tens of thousands. Most families can't do it in one go. So they wait, they turn the thermostat up, they pay the bill and assume that's just what cold winters cost. But here's the thing about that assumption. It would have baffled someone living 100 years ago. Picture a farmhouse in northern Canada in the dead of winter. January, -20 outside. Snow pressed hard against the siding, ice forming at the window corners, breath visible indoors near the glass. Inside, a family is surviving the season comfortably, burning less fuel than you might expect, keeping the frost off the walls. They're not using sealed gas units. They're not using anything manufactured in a factory. They've stretched a piece of waxed linen across a wooden frame and mounted it a few centimeters inside the window glass. The gap between the linen and the glass, that still sealed pocket of air, is doing almost exactly what a modern double-glazed window does, for almost nothing. This wasn't unique to Canada. In Victorian England, windows got covered with oiled paper or thin sheets of mica, held in simple wooden frames. Not because it looked elegant, because it kept the heat in and the cold air from creeping across the floorboards at night. Scandinavian farmers did the same with cellulose films. The materials changed depending on what was available. The principle never did. Trap the air, stop the convection, keep the warmth inside. By the time World War II ended and fuel rationing hit British and American households hard, plastic film window kits were showing up in hardware stores across the country. Marketed specifically as a practical solution for tight budgets and cold winters. People installed them, felt the difference almost immediately, and kept using them year after year. For roughly a decade, this was a common, accepted, respectable way to insulate a home. And then, almost exactly when it should have kept growing, it started to fade. But before that story, the science deserves a moment. Because once you understand why this works, you'll find it hard to believe it was ever considered optional. Heat doesn't escape through glass simply because glass is thin. It escapes through a process called convection. Warm air inside your room drifts toward the cold window surface. It loses its heat to the glass. It drops toward the floor, replaced by more warm air that does the same thing. Your heating system runs constantly, fighting a cycle it can never fully win, because every warm air molecule that touches cold glass is a small defeat. Multiply that across every window in your house, across every hour of every winter night, and the loss becomes staggering. Now add the plastic film, mounted a few centimeters in front of the glass. What happens to that air gap in between? It goes still. No airflow, no convection cycle grinding away. The warmth has no easy path out. That 2 to 3 centimeter pocket of trapped, motionless air becomes a thermal barrier that behaves almost identically to the sealed gap in a high-end double-glazed window. In the 1970s, the US Department of Energy actually tested this. The results were striking. A basic plastic window insulation kit, the kind you could assemble yourself in an afternoon, reduced heat loss through single-pane glass by up to 50%. Not a marginal improvement, half. For $10, a wooden or plastic frame and a sheet of clear film heated tight with a hairdryer, you were getting performance that rivaled products costing 30 to 50 times more. The installation required no contractor, no specialist tools, no waiting weeks for a quote. The finished product, when done carefully, was essentially invisible. Clear as glass, tight as a drum, and silent in the way that only genuinely useful things tend to be. This isn't just historical. A homeowner in Minnesota documented exactly this in a recent winter. Single-pane windows throughout an older house, drafty frames, heating bills climbing past $300 a month by February. She spent $40 on a multi-window plastic film kit, spent one Saturday afternoon installing it across 4 rooms, and watched her next bill drop by nearly $80. Not a renovation, not a contractor, a roll of film, a hairdryer, and an understanding of basic physics that most people were never taught to use. So why, given all of that, did it disappear? That question has a more uncomfortable answer than most people expect. It wasn't the technology that failed, the physics didn't stop working. What changed was the market around it. By the 1980s, the construction industry had standardized around factory-manufactured sealed window units. Builders wanted one product, certified and warrantied, that could be ordered in bulk and installed without variation. Plastic film didn't fit that model. It couldn't be patented in a way that scaled. It couldn't be sold with a showroom and a financing package. So gradually, quietly, it got repositioned in the public mind. Not as a smart, low-cost solution, as a workaround. Something you did when you couldn't afford better. The kind of thing you didn't mention to neighbors. That shift in perception was remarkably effective. By the time the average homeowner in the 1980s thought about window insulation, they pictured a professional installation, a contractor, a warranty card. The plastic film option felt like an admission of failure by comparison, even though the performance difference between the two methods was marginal at best. Then the 1990s arrived and brought a genuine, well-intentioned environmental movement with them. Single-use plastics were being correctly identified as a serious problem. But in that cultural moment, a reusable plastic film that dramatically reduced energy consumption got swept up in the same criticism as throwaway packaging. The nuance was lost. The method went down with the stigma, and almost nobody stopped to question whether that made any sense. The cruelest irony? Replacing a single-pane window with a new double-glazed unit requires manufacturing new glass, new frames, new seals, new gas fills, and disposing of the old unit. That process carries a significant environmental cost. Raw materials, factory energy, transport, installation waste. The plastic film method, by contrast, uses grams of material, reduces heating demand substantially, and can be removed and reinstalled for years without leaving a mark. By almost any honest measure of environmental impact, the cheap old trick wins. But perception had already moved on, and perception moves faster than logic. A generation grew up with one message repeated clearly and consistently. Real insulation means real windows. Anything else is just makeshift. And so, a solution with proven, documented physics-backed effectiveness quietly vanished from mainstream use, leaving behind only the expensive alternative and a public that had been convinced it was the only one that ever existed. Here's where the story starts reversing. Architects working on off-grid homes and passive house projects have started rediscovering what those Canadian farmers and British households knew. Removable film panels are showing up in winter builds. Magnetic mounted interior frames go up in November and come down in April, leaving no trace on the window frame. The aesthetic has caught up. Once installed carefully, these are virtually indistinguishable from bare glass. Just cold barriers that happen to cost almost nothing. In Scandinavia, fitting given the deep tradition there, community retrofit projects are now teaching residents of aging housing stock how to add interior film panels to their existing windows. No contractor required, no planning permission, no renovation budget, just film, frame, and an air pocket. Households participating in those programs are seeing heating costs drop by around 25%. From a few dollars of materials and an afternoon of work, the next evolution is in the materials themselves. Engineers are developing biopolymer films, transparent sheets made from plant-based starch rather than petroleum. Cellulose-derived films that perform the same thermal function, but decompose at end of life. The same physics, the same two-finger air gap, The same 50% heat loss reduction, now built with materials that finally answer the environmental criticism that buried the original method. The old idea and modern values, pointing in the same direction at last. And maybe that's the real story underneath all of this. We tend to think progress is linear, that if something cheaper existed and still got replaced, the replacement must have been better. But markets don't always move toward what works best. They move toward what sells best, toward what can be packaged, certified, financed, and installed by someone who charges for their time. A $10 roll of plastic film that a homeowner installs on a Saturday afternoon is a terrible business model. A $3,000 window with a 10-year warranty and a contractor's labor fee attached? That's an industry. And industries have a quiet, persistent way of making their competition seem inadequate. Not through performance, but through perception. The solution didn't fail, it was just never profitable enough to survive. Stand at a cold window on a winter morning. Watch condensation trace lines down the glass. Watch frost grip the corners while warm air rises from the radiator below, drifting straight toward the pane and losing itself there. That's 30% of your heating bill cycling through that glass right now. A $10 piece of plastic could stop half of it today. Would you actually try this in your own home?